Welcome back to the Reconnection Revolution. Today we are joined by Emma and Rhys from Acknowledge This. Would you like to tell our listeners a bit about what you do and why you do it?
So I'm Rhys. I work in Aboriginal education. I've been working in Aboriginal education for a very long time. My passion lies with culture. I love culture. I think culture is really cool. And I've been working in this space for about 15 years now. I do like my little, that's who I am. And then you do who you are, and then what we do. And
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm Emma Gibbons, and I'm a change strategist. So I focus on creating positive change and leveraging people to create that change. Starting with my first job was working to elect Barack Obama back in 2008. So very excited to take those campaign skills that I've learned over the years and apply it now in the context that we work here in Australia.
Yeah.
So who wants to do the Acknowledge This intro?
So Acknowledge This is, it's a conversation, really. Emma and I, we met up like in 2017, and we had similar people that we knew, and we caught up, and we just liked who each other was, and we thought, oh, we just want to work with each other, you know? And the first thing we did was like, we actually thought about doing a podcast. Like that was originally our original goal, was like, let's do a podcast and let's call it Generation Y, WHY, and talk about all of the Ys and the things. And I still think that's a very clever name. And then we sort of trialed a few things. And the one thing that we landed on, Emma being in change strategy, me being Aboriginal education, was acknowledgements of country. We're like, this is an interesting topic because everybody's doing them.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why.
No.
So what we did was we went, okay, let's have a conversation about acknowledgements of country, and then let's do that, but publicly. Like we'll do public workshops on Zoom, and then since then we built that into a workshop, and then that workshop since then has been built into a business where then we now still do the Acknowledge This workshop where we talk about everything acknowledgements of country, but also more stuff in the broadest culture change space. So my connection is my Aboriginal connections from my mum's side. So I got 3 clans on that side. There's Budimaya, and there's Yamaji, and there's Noongar. So these are all people from the southwest of Western Australia. Most of the people in Perth are Noongars. But where my mum grew up was north of Perth, south of Geraldton, a little town called Miningu. And that's Budimaya country that way. A lot of Yamajis up in Geraldton, a little bit more north, but everybody down there in the southwest. So that's my mob on my mum's side. But whenever I do this who's your mob thing, I also do my dad's side.
Yeah.
People do this thing where it's like, who's your mob? And oftentimes the answer is like, here's the list of Aboriginals that I'm related to.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could do that forever. But I also do my dad's side because that's as important as well. And I say I got 3 other clans on my dad's side, okay? And that's just like all Aussies, right? A little bit of Scottish, a little bit of Irish, a little bit of English.
Yeah.
All right? You know, so about 6th or 7th generation Aussie on dad's side that way. So that's who I am. That's my mom.
And also, I love how you do honor both the modern and traditional inputs of yourself. And I guess it's nice because it honors the intersectionality that we all have.
Yeah.
Like even, whiteness isn't a homogenous bucket. We all have a lot of different intersections.
And that's a great point of conversation. And I think what I understand from what you're doing with Acknowledge This, because I found out about you through a client, not through the, thought leader network that we probably could have connected through, because the client was talking about how much impact the workshop it had because it demystified something that people felt very unsure of, very uncomfortable about. And, part of what we talk about is how disconnected people are from themselves, but also how polarized the world's becoming and how we're scared to talk about history, background. We're scared to ask about people's history and background a lot of the time because it's almost like, is that rude? Have I judged you somehow or said something wrong? So what I understand about the workshops is that you create a positive and safe space, but it's coming from a place of exploration and joy as opposed to something that people feel scared about.
Definitely.
That's a really good, I like the way that you summarize that actually. Yeah. I'll say it a different way. It's a process that people have committed to and people are scared of.
Yeah.
So people are in this position where they go, oh, you're kind of damned if you do one and you're damned if you don't. If you do one, it's probably seen as tokenistic.
Yes.
If you don't do one, it's being disrespectful.
Yeah.
So you might as well just do it and just like hope that you sort of fly under the radar.
That's right.
And we just go, look, man, you don't have to do that. Culture is what we do.
Yeah, it's how we participate.
It's how we participate, right? So all we do is encourage people. We just go, hey, here's a context. Here's a context of acknowledgement. And then now here's how you can make it your own. That's it.
Yeah.
I think we also go deeper. People come in for the skill, how to do the acknowledgement of country and what box do I tick and what words do I have to say? And we say, all right, throw your brain out. We're coming from the heart. Like, let's move down here. And it's quite transformational because once people find their own connection to country and that they can have a connection, then they get curious and they want to learn more.
Yeah.
And then we give them that little nudge of encouragement to find their courage and do something that's a bit scary, makes them a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
But what we do when we become vulnerable, as you know, is we gain greater connection.
Yeah. I think that's what's so important right now because people are so disconnected from themselves. You know, we do a lot of work in the leadership space, but we do it around values a lot of the time and a whole lot of other stuff too. But really, our model's about deep connection with self first. And most people that we work with, regardless of where they sit hierarchically in an organization, say, I don't really know who I am. I don't really know what my values are or what I'm about. And even if they've done some kind of development-y course before through work, having time and space where they actually have to open up and become vulnerable and are allowed to and encouraged to, and other people are doing it too, you know, it bridges divide. And I think there's a lot of false divide and echo chambers, particularly online. So it gives them a place where they're inhuman and sort of going, this is okay. This is actually what we're supposed to do.
I sometimes describe what we do as like cracking open that conversation, creating common language, making it okay to talk about what's difficult. And when we lean into that discomfort, that's where a phrase I often like think about is like friction creates sparks.
Yes.
Like, sure, it's frictious, sure, it's discomfort, but it also lights a fire. It creates warmth. It creates, again, more meaningful connection. It's like, how many times can we say connection in this podcast?
I think we should say it a lot. But there's something in that, isn't there? Because sometimes we need friction too, or nothing changes.
Absolutely.
And so we need people to feel upset and angry and, you know, but often they won't do that when they other groups. And so when we go through this kind of like rote acknowledgement, not really understanding why we do it, feeling uncomfortable, in a way that separates us out further instead of bringing us closer, which it should intentionally, I think.
Yeah, it is a practice of connection. And currently it's like a practice of eye rolling.
Yeah, totally.
Or like, ugh, again.
Yeah.
And even for us, like we were at a conference and 7 speakers all in a row did an acknowledgement of country. And this is our bag and we're both like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Emma and I, we
actually,
we bet. No, we do. We go to forums and it depends on how many speakers there are, right? We go, I reckon it's going to be, we got 10 speakers. We go, I reckon it's going to be 6 speakers.
I'm like,
so it's going to be 8. This is a bit more progressive, you know, it's going to be 8. So it's just like, and it's funny because we know what's happening, right? Like the irony is that people have convinced, this is a real shame, right? And this goes beyond just acknowledgements of country. It goes into actions in general. People convince themselves that their actions are good. But they don't want to go deeper and be like, oh, it's actually coming from a bad place. Because acknowledgement of country, right? It's like, okay, speaking number 6, they're like in their brain on the surface level, they're going, it's a respectful thing to do. And what I would like to do is be respectful. And here I am being respectful. But really, you just go a little bit deeper and they go, mate, 6 people did it before me. 6 people. I can't not stop doing this right now. Yeah. But people get afraid of talking about that. Yeah. Because I don't want to be seen as a bad guy, a bad person. The irony is that like most of this is in your head. Yeah. Most of this is in our heads, our fears. It really is.
Yeah, I just want to double back to, I think in our world, I've been really thinking about our attention and like the attention economy and how, sometimes having that 2-hour workshop.
Sorry, what would you say?
Nice.
Well played.
Yeah. But having that 2-hour workshop, and I'm sure your experiences as well, to facilitate the reflection, to almost carve out that space. And a lot of companies are like, oh, can you make it a 45-minute lunch and learn? Could you make it 25 minutes? Could you just get it into the smallest possible container? And it's like, you're actually missing the point. The point is to sit, to reflect, to look at who you are and the themes and how you connect to this place and connect to these concepts. And that's where the really juicy and beautiful acknowledgements of country are born.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. And I think our attention is so limited and distracted. That we find even when we're doing, education, so teaching stuff as part of what we do, that we have to be really conscious of how we structure the learning because people can't sit and absorb the way that they used to be able to. So we have to kind of come at it in chunks and little bits and then have time where you're sitting with it.
My statement of that is like, we did that to ourselves.
Yeah.
I have to put my own responsibility. I can't be like, oh, it's the evil social media. Like, we can do this external thing, but I go, that's we've chosen to pick that phone up. We choose to have our attention
Yep.
split like this.
Definitely.
You know, so my antidote for this, I think, at this point, I know there's something else you want to talk about as well, but like, is to connect with country. That'll help you connect to self, because I know you were talking about that before.
Yep.
But there's this thing and this relationship that we have with this concept of country
Yep.
that goes beyond politics now. And I truly think, at least at this stage in my life, that is an antidote to a lot of this disconnect that we have.
Completely agree. And science is backing it up.
There's a lot more
as science
research.
does, it often proves what we already inherently know. But I think that so many people spend so little time actually feeling like they're part of the outside world. And it's a key way that we have historically, traditionally made meaning. And so, you think about our business manager, Sarah, surfs, and she was talking to us yesterday about the difference in her when she's surfed for a few hours versus when she hasn't been able to get in the water. And, I think that immersion in nature, whatever it is for you, it's what we would have called church at one stage. It's an element of the spiritual and definitely the physical. It physiologically affects us to be out in the world that we're a part of. We forget that we're part of it.
People get scared with that word spiritual.
Yeah, they
because
really
they
do.
attach it to dogma. And this is a conversation I have with my mate all the time. He's very logical. He's very dogmatic. Not dogmatic. He's like an atheist plus. You know what I mean? Unlike their religion. And I talk about spirit, and I go like, there's a difference between like the thing that you think, like the cult version of this, but then there's the spiritual of like that's personal. That's something that you don't have to commit to within anything but yourself.
That's right.
And to link that to what you're saying, like I get him to, I just go, humor me, man. I humor me. Like when we go on our walks, when we connect to country, I go, take your shoes off. And his logical brain is like, why? That doesn't do anything. I'm like, shut up, man. Just take your shoes off. And then we're walking on the nice cold grass at nighttime. And I'm like, how does that feel? He's like, it feels pretty good. I'm like, that's spiritual, man.
That's right.
That's so good for you, like whatever. Like you don't have to try to logistify like what is happening right now. What is the experience you're having? It feels good. Hey, well, you're connecting to the country, right? You know? So,
and it's the frameworks and the language that we've put around some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But also just conceptually, I think we're so disconnected. The idea that we all came from stars, and so did the plants, and so did every creature, and so we're all actually sharing significant DNA, and yet we feel so separate from each other, and all we see is the differences, and we definitely feel separate from the world. And I think that that's our way back into people feeling more connected with themselves in the world. Is nature feels less intimidating than spirit that has dogma created around it. So if I call it a different word, like surfing or walking the grass barefoot or working in my garden, then I can access that differently. Yeah? Because it's like, it's not intellectual now. And we know that's not intellectual, but that's where people go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing, something I often think about is the balance between the individual and the collective. And the individual is important, know thyself and your identity and who you are and what you stand for, absolutely. But the collective is really on the decline or kind of in a crisis. I don't know, I'm trying not to catastrophize it.
You've clearly read the draft of my book, because we're hitting all the points in it.
Okay,
so yeah.
And especially
agreed.
with the decline of third spaces like a church or like the park, like the school, the community centers. And when we go out into nature, we find that connection to something larger than ourselves, part of a larger system. And that even if it's not a collective of other people, I think it wakes up that spark within us, that golden thread that unites us all. And yeah, I think that's the coming home to that concept.
Yeah. And I think people inherently actually have started to feel uncomfortable about it. Like we avoid being outside in weather. Everything is geared for comfort, and ease. And actually, like I have an idea that always sticks with me, that we kind of calcify, like we get stuck. We're not part of anything. We're not permeable anymore. We're these little individual blocks.
Fragile.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes. And that's specifically, that's the reason why I go out in the rain.
Yeah.
I go out at midnight. It's raining. Let's get the water on your face, man.
We're supposed to feel
you get
this.
wet, man.
Like,
you got skin.
Wet.
It's fine.
We're part of the world.
You'll get a
it's
cold.
part of us.
So I'll get a cold,
Yeah.
So I'm going to get a cold, I'll let it, let's do that,
Yeah.
something I consider too is how prosperous and soft our society is now, especially in
Absolutely.
Australia. And so it's easy to slip into, oh, what's comfortable for me, and to stay in that comfort zone and to not push outside of that comfort zone into more courageous space, into trying something different. It happens in our conversations. It happens in our communities. And that's, I think, a key reason why we aren't finding new connection or deeper connection.
Yeah.
Because we're comfortable where we are.
And we don't, I think people, even the idea of community, I think we've lost any real understanding of what that means to me.
And especially diverse communities, right? Like you have your friends that you went to high school with, or that your kids go to school together, so you're friends with the parents. Like you have these people who you're sort of like stuck with, or maybe that you choose to curate over time. But we don't actually have many diverse communities with different perspectives, and where we're rubbing up against each other and having some of that friction.
Yeah. And because especially in Australia, we have this expectation that people should do some sort of assimilation to some idea of what we're supposed to be like culturally, when no one really knows what the culture is and no one's actively trying to create it. So we all have this kind of watered down version where we're not really sharing ourselves, and then that whole thing about we're scared to ask as well.
Yeah. The tall poppy syndrome is very much a part of that here in Australia culturally. I remember coming from the States, and I was like, what do you mean you guys don't like brag about your accomplishments? Like, it's important to talk about, like, I did this kick-ass thing. Like, yes, celebrate it. No, couldn't. No.
You'd be torn down very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's like the whole cancel culture thing is part of the issue too. We're so, especially online, we're so willing to just be anonymous and tear people down.
So cooked, man. It's so cooked. It's a sad reality, really, isn't it? And like I try to find a nuance and not just like complain about it, but it is a real thing where we've become insulated to the point where, because we've all become these people pleasers, and then what we've done is then in the pursuit of pleasing people that we've never met or we don't even know, we become these like bland creatures where our language is very politically correct.
Yep.
Fuck, it's boring, man.
Yeah.
It's so boring, man. And like, again, like I do honestly believe most of the fears, especially that's breeding on the online spaces, is twofold. One, it's you're dealing with people that are just scared of life. And the other is that like they can express that fear through their keyboard because they've got no real consequence. The irony is about cancel culture is that at least in our case, there's never been a situation where in person somebody's come up and wanted to cancel us or said said the wrong thing. Like when you see people and meet people in person, everybody's like, they're pretty cool with you because they can see your intention. But if you took that and then put a transcript on it and you did it without the context of being person and put it online, it's more subject to that scrutiny, because people don't have that. People have that divide of I'm online or I'm not online, So it's like the whole cancel culture thing. It starts online, and I think it sort of spreads outwards from there. But it's definitely an online thing, cancel culture.
Yeah, and I think it's because I'm anonymous, and also if I feel like I lack power and agency, then there's a way that I feel like I can access some of that, or even maybe some control, without really actually thinking that there are humans. It's like that technology thing. It's almost like people become less human. They're on TV. They're not real. Yeah,
that's a good way to think. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also, something I've been thinking a lot about is our culture of offense, or our culture of judgment. And there's a hypersensitivity which creates quite a lot of fragility. And I'm still trying to figure out how to express this idea, but like we need more resilience. To allow more, and to give people more grace. Yeah. So that, and it's like my offense could be a tripwire. Oh gosh, you said the wrong word. Now you're a bad person. I'm going to attack you and I'm going to tell you how shitty you are. Or your offense could be quite a larger barrier, a larger line. So like, okay, hey, that's the yellow zone. Didn't love that.
Yeah.
Here's why. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Not immediate, like, oh, you're a bad person, judgment, shame.
Yeah. Yeah. But we don't have the skills. We talk about the fact that our peopling is plummeting. So if we look at, 18 to 25-year-olds who we believe have 40% less empathy than somebody my age, and it's because they've been raised in environments where technology's been their main interface. So parents have been on technology, their relationships have been conducted through technology. So there's a huge discomfort with eye contact, for example. and an inability to read body language. And so because the skills aren't there, we haven't had practice, and it's not just young people, post-COVID, I think that there's a huge level of social awkwardness. I felt it myself going back into the real world. It was actually just a bit safer sometimes behind the screen,
I need significant more alone time since COVID.
Yeah, me
I
too.
didn't realize how much more I need space for me. Yeah.
But that's a good learning, isn't it?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think part of it is it's conceptual. I think people totally lack resilience. We can't say anything to anyone because it all sounds like bullying as opposed to different perspectives, trying to understand, what do I think? How do I explore that if I'm too scared to say what I think, even if it's not well informed? How do I broaden that judgment if no one's going to actually talk to me about it? And if we don't have the skills, then it's a double whammy.
Yeah. And something we talk about is shifting that from a culture of judgment to a culture of love.
Yeah.
And how do we respond with love? How do we make it okay to try, to fuck it up, to fail, and have it safe, it safe to try? And I think, how do you start to create that culture of love? Simply by modeling it.
Yeah.
By being it.
Yeah.
That's also a very radical word that people don't like.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, man.
People hate the word love.
Well, because it comes, like, when people hear that word, you think it's fucking woo-woo. Why are you talking about love?
It's only in the
conditional
movies.
love.
Yeah.
It's conditional love, right? And it sounds cliche when we talk about this concept of love, but it's like we can't not at this point, because that is truly what we believe is at the root of actions and everything, is that it either comes from the place of fear or it comes from the place of love.
Absolutely.
And people treat it like it's like you've only got a finite amount of it.
Yeah.
Like, here's my little barrel of love.
Yeah.
And I got maybe, like, you search into it every day. You open it up in the morning and you go, man, I got a little bit of kindness in there.
Yeah.
And I'll give you like a tiny little bit, but I got a little bit. I got to save it. And it's almost like, oh, you're going to give me some of your love? All right, cool. Let me add that to my pile.
Yeah.
And let me see what I'm going to do with that. Like we treat it like it's money.
Yeah.
And that is a conditional love, because it means that what I give to you, this kindness, this compliment I'm giving you, I'm giving it to you because I expect a return.
Yeah. A transaction.
You know? Now that's not a bad thing. It's not an evil thing, but it is a conditional thing.
Yeah.
It means that we start using love like we use it like money. But we believe that love is an infinite resource. It's an infinite resource that works a lot differently than conditional. It's like, I'm going to give it to you freely, this infinite resource, and then it's going to come back at some other way, and so, because you're going to receive it in the way it was given.
Yeah.
Infinitely.
Yeah.
And you can give it infinitely. You can give it infinitely. And all these fears that we have about, we say the wrong words with our acknowledgements of country and being online, it's not real. Like, it's not a reality,
But most people don't. Where do they access this infinite love? So this is the issue, right? So if I can only be as compassionate to somebody else as I am to myself. And if I don't know myself, don't necessarily like myself, if I feel like I have not received or even understand the concept of what really being loved is, and I think a lot of people feel that way, then I don't understand conceptually that it exists as an infinite capacity that I can access and also, spread. It does feel transaction. It feels like I only have this much. This is all I got. This is all I can give. I've
been on the journey of learning to access more love.
Yeah.
I'll humbly say that. I didn't walk into this with that frame. It's been through a lot of conversations with Rhys, and I have learned that it is such a renewable resource. But how I started was very small things.
Yeah.
What I realized when I'm walking down the street and I acknowledge someone I'm walking past, I give them the half smile. I kind of call it the nice white lady smile.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, how do I actually smile with my heart?
Yeah.
How do I give them some teeth? You know, or and not even I'm forcing it, but what is my heart saying to this human? And something as simple as a smile, I know it's love because when they smile back, I feel the warmth.
Yeah.
And it's that warmth that I continue to harness and nurture. And again, as I said, I found it has been a renewable resource, and it grows the more I practice. So like anything, it's like a muscle, right?
Yeah.
The more you practice it, the more you can find it.
Yeah.
But I'm really big about start really small.
Yeah.
We're not saying radically reform your relationships, but maybe a stranger.
Yeah.
Just spread a little kindness with a stranger. Feel that sensation inside. That's love.
Yeah. Yeah, but most people would not associate that with love. And I think, our greatest human need is to be seen, accepted, valued for who we authentically are. So, that's the core of belonging, isn't it?
We've been on a real bend about authenticity. Got a lot there.
It's number one in our model because, if I can't show up as who I am, if I don't feel like I can be accepted as who I am, then it's very hard for me to give that to somebody else because I'm not coming from a place that's real. I'm coming from a projection. You don't see me because I'm just giving you what I've decided to give you,
Yeah.
And I think,
mask.
yeah, the masks, the masks that many of us have been taught to wear, the roles we've been told that we should play.
The expectations.
Yet we still choose to wear.
We still choose to wear them.
Always going to bring that back where I go like, there's always the external of like, we're in this position because of things out of control. It is true.
Yeah.
Yet we still choose it. We are in control and we are responsible for ourselves as well. So we can pull ourselves out of that.
I agree, but I think some people, that's never occurred to them. I'm thinking about a leader I've been working with in India, and we did a 6-month coaching thing, and she was saying at the start, I was asking her, being quite challenging around authenticity, around what roles are you expected to play? What did your family, the world, the society around you, your communities tell you good looked like, success looked like? And have you ever really stopped to question them? Or do you just think, I'm having a successful life? Because by all intents and purposes, she would be seen in the world right now as successful. And honestly, 5 months in, we had a call and she said, everything I said was wrong. I've never actually thought about it. Everything I'm doing is what I've been told to do. And now I don't want any of it. And I'm going to blow it all up. And it's like, wow, okay. And I think this is the thing. I think some people have never stopped to question it.
I think this is, and I'm going to bring it back to this because we're sort of going around like, what's the answer to that?
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring it back to this connection to country.
Yeah.
And this is what our ancient Aboriginal people have been telling people for a very long time, is that this is a universal standard with, like, again, Aboriginal culture, like any other culture, there's differences. Here's one of the things that seems to be a universal standard, and that is that country teaches and that country heals. Capital C, country. Now, when we talk about country, we're not talking about the space. We're talking about the spirit of country. And again, that word spirit, people go,
yeah, what does that
spirit?
mean?
What are you talking about? No, I'm just talking about the way you feel when you walk on that grass, Now, I think that, like when I go for my wanders, my walks, and we go for our walks, this is the time where we can reflect on two things, where country allows us to go, we get to get away from inputs for like a second, okay? Yep. Enough to just, and when I say connect with country in this way, I mean like I don't really listen to headphones or put my music in because it's another input, What I do is I walk with, we acknowledge country in this way, right? We go like, Emma high fives trees. She like goes up and high fives a tree.
Well, again, and it's like, there's a lot of science behind the transaction of energy when you touch a living thing.
Absolutely.
And it takes some of it.
Both ways.
Both ways,
and that's the thing that people are like, what? Yeah.
Country will sing to you. Right?
Yeah.
So like when I say sing to you, for me, depending on where I am, sometimes it's the galahs. A lot of times my night walks where I go, it's the frogs. Right now we've got the frogs that have breeding season of the frogs. And so it gives
even
you an
Even
opportunity.
the wind the other night you were saying
wind
through the trees.
Wind was talking as well. The wind is talking very loud. And it gives you the opportunity to connect to that thing that is more than you, that you understand very well, because it's just country. Everything comes from country. Again, that's the other thing people go, I want to go on country. You're always on country.
Yeah.
We're here
You're
right
always
now.
on country.
Doesn't matter if there's cement over dirt.
Correct.
It's still, you're in the natural environment.
You go across the road into the bush, you're nearer to nature.
Yeah.
But don't get it confused with the concept of not being on country. You're always on country. So people go like, if I was to connect to country, people think like, to connect to country, you got to like go to Uluru.
Yeah.
Like, no, you got to park. No, you can do that. Like that's the way of the modern custodian,
Yeah.
So in this way, I just bring that back to there where I go like, we're all disconnected and we don't know what's going on. Everything's online. Everything's fucked. And you go, cool, go for a walk, man. Just go for a walk.
Yeah.
And just let your brain. I find this so beautiful as well. It's like when you don't have the inputs and you're just walking with that rhythm, your brain's just going, now I can just think about things that I don't have, like that I'm not attached to.
Yeah.
I can just think, there was that conversation today and there was this and that's beautiful.
That's where we do the check-in. The common frame we use for checking in both with ourselves and with each other is how's your mind, how's your heart, how's your spirit?
Yeah.
And it's a really valuable conversation to touch on those multiple ways of being and understanding yourself.
Yeah. It is. I still feel like, how do we demystify, because I like what you said, that it's not nature. when you say country talks to us, it sings to us, if I haven't felt that experience since maybe I was a kid, because I've removed myself from
Turn
it.
to the inner child.
Exactly. How do we, go for a walk is right, but it's the tune in part, isn't it? It's the get the noise out, the other messages, the other inputs.
Well, and be in the now, in the present moment.
Yeah.
Another technique we use to get in the present moment is name 5 things that you see.
Yeah.
Green plant, camera lens, microphone, that like naming 5 things gets you here and now.
Yeah.
And so it's, not living in the past or thinking about the future. It's being in the now.
Which again, I think we're not that good at, are we?
Oh,
right now.
We all can practice more.
Yes. Yeah.
There's wandering. Wandering is different to walking. So walking is like you got a destination in mind. You go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
That's a walk. It's exercise. It's like it's like love with condition. It's like walking is wandering with condition. Wandering is cool. That's something we've been practicing. The irony of the wandering is to embrace the chaos. So for example, it's like, okay, we got time. Let's walk outside and see where we get to.
Yeah.
And that just allows us to go, let's follow like wherever there's color blue, and then you can go this way, and there's blue color, so we'll go this way and we'll go over this way. And that's a really fun one as well, because what that does is it allows you to go, I can let the universe sort of take control.
Yeah.
And when was that here when we saw that angel? Was that in Melbourne, Sydney? And Emma and I, we went for a wander in Sydney, and we saw an angel.
Yeah.
And it was this lady who was singing opera. And it was like 12 o'clock at night. Yeah, this is like late. Not many people were around. And we were just, because country was singing to us, right? She was singing. And we're like, oh, what's that sound? So we wandered in that direction, and we saw this lady. And me and Emma just sat down.
In this big old mall, right? So it's just like these big buildings, like maybe 10 people. Oh.
Yeah. And we're just sitting there and we're listening to this, like, and two things happened, and like we're just sitting there, and like I can't explain this, Celeste. I'm a man, so I don't. This is a big thing for me to admit, but I was crying.
Yeah. We looked over each other. She finished the song, and we're like,
I was like, I remember, I'm like, what is this emotion? And I'm like, my brain was like, man, don't even try to there's not a logic here. Like, am I sad? And you kind of go, hey, what's happening? And I go, nah, man, so me and Emma, we're just getting blown away by this woman, this angel, and we're crying. And one of the best things, I'm going to tell this story. I'm sorry.
I was going to
You going to tell the story about the guy?
I was just going to say, I was just going to say.
You pass it to you then.
Because like, so we're watching her sing this beautiful song. And then again, in the spirit of connection and the beauty of humans, and like, it's already stunning. She sings this song, and this guy comes up to take the tenor. And so he starts singing with her.
A random, by the way.
Really?
Just
like a guy.
Walking by, just pulls over, and it's like he just starts singing near her, like a meter away. And then she pulls him in and grabs the microphone. And these I'm getting goosebumps. 2 humans just singing this song together, having that moment of serendipity and magic and shared moment.
And what led us there was the wonder.
Yeah.
Openness.
The wonder set us there, and that put us in the present, in the now, so much so that we were crying, couldn't even realize why. So much so that even the universe itself, like, pulled together a situation which is so memorable, like memorable not just in your mind but in your heart,
physically,
and like that, you will never, like, I don't think that many people will remember that. Like, I don't think she'll remember that, let alone he might not remember that, but I will remember that. Because we embraced the wonder, we were there in the now, and then that was a point where we felt the most connected. We went up to that lady afterwards and were just like, first of all, take our money. Like, just take.
You're obviously a pro who is working overtime.
I'm just like, and I'll never meet you again. But you've changed me, and that's because we embraced that wonder. We got there, so that was that, and that is a connection to country.
Yeah,
that is a connection to country.
Most of us walked in some way that wasn't optimizing. And I think we're so caught up in that optimizing thing that every day get to the gym and eat the right food and it's all this do the right thing according to the unwell capitalist structure. And, I write about tiny acts of radical rebellion. And one of those is rest and whatever not optimizing is, wandering without not purposeful stuff, lacking in purpose, being.
Yeah. The way I frame this, and this came to me during COVID, was our society views productivity as value.
Yeah.
How do we reframe rest as value,
Yeah.
play as value?
Yeah.
Like that we can create space and social license for these other things,
Yep.
not just productivity and efficiency and maximizing profit.
Busy, busy, busy.
Mm.
Yep, on the hamster wheel.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's scary for people to jump off.
Mm.
So we have the same thing about the tiny acts.
Yeah.
You know, what if you just sat in the morning before you did anything and lit a candle? I read this story once about a couple that lived on a boat somewhere, you know, one of these river boats, and they didn't have electricity. So every morning they would wake up and one of them would light a candle and the other one would make coffee. It's probably the coffee that got me. I love the coffee. And they would just have this gentle connecting start to the day that was probably them connecting with themselves as much as with each other, but just being alive and present and not up, out, you know, which they enable those moments of ritual. They enable us to stop this constant chase for more.
The spaciousness.
Yeah.
In the work that we do, I'm like the token black fellow in the relationship. I'm the guy that gives the cultural awareness and the acknowledgements of country. It's great. It's really cool. And that does require a little bit of courage. But I always ask Emma to talk about courage because Emma's much more courageous than me. Because you got to understand, like, it's easier for me to be the token Aboriginal to talk to Australians about acknowledgements of country. But for a white woman coming from America, in
Cancel
this
culture.
space,
Yeah.
listen, man, she got targets
Yeah.
just for being her, which sucks,
Yeah.
right? Because, you know, Emma's her own person, you know,
Yeah.
but it takes an incredible amount of courage. And that's why I always pass it to Emma to talk about courage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love talking about courage because I think that's such a key piece to us finding greater connection and to stepping outside ourselves because courage is that line between comfort and challenge.
Yeah.
You don't need to stick your neck way out into the challenge space. You know, just flirt with it. And I define courage as having fear and taking a step anyway. You know, being comfortable with that feeling. Yeah. And so, I love courage. And again, I'm a word nerd. And so you dive into the etymology of courage and it's two root words, kur and aj.
Yeah.
Kur being heart, aj being time. And so, you know, courage is the time for heart.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's such a good reminder to get out of our brain, which is that productivity, efficiency, maximizing. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We can come from here.
Yeah.
And it's a different answer, a different response often.
And the brain thing you just said triggered in me, you know, the idea that I think we see ourselves so often as just brains in skulls on legs.
Yeah.
Who said that?
It's a brain on a stick.
Brain on a stick. We're brains on sticks.
Mine's on a stick,
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
So we're not embodied. And when we teach people, we have this thing, we always use alliteration because I think people remember it, but we talk about the body, brain, being barometer. And it's like, you can't be fully present if you're not aware of the thoughts you're having, you know, the feelings that you're experiencing, but your physical state as well. And they're not separate from each other. They're all part of the same thing. So being able to tune into them and work on all of them and each part of them separately is part of what helps us figure out who we are and how we are.
I agree with that. In fact, that's what I do on my walks. We do on our walks. So like if I'm by myself, I talk to myself.
Yeah.
And like you might think it's crazy. Listen, it's more like I'll check in. I'll go, all right, brain. And then in my brain, there's like this character in my head, which is my brain. And he's got a suit on. And
He's got a suit.
Yes, Rhys.
Like it.
And then I talk to my brain. And it goes, all right, brain, what do we need to sort out? My brain goes, brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, hey, heart. My heart right now is being like a little kid. It's like the little guy, right? It's like the little precious child that's in us, you know? And he just wants to love and just go and have fun. And sometimes he's really sad and angry. And sometimes, and you go, hey, heart. And he goes, yeah. And you go, how you going? What do you need to talk about today, you know? And then my heart goes, oh, yeah, this. And then how brain responds to that. And then you talk to spirit. And spirit is this, and again, there's that word spirit. It's more just like, you could say like the universe, God, like whatever that is. I just go, and usually that's not much of a conversation. Usually that's just like, oh, I'm just grateful for existing and being alive. Like, come on, like breathing oxygen's pretty cool, man. Like having the experience is great. So I do that with the check-ins. We're talking about check-ins. And I'll check in like mind, heart, spirit, and that's why we do it with each other as well. But oftentimes that's that connection to country again, giving that space to walk and wander and doing that within yourself. I find that very beneficial.
Yeah.
Very beneficial.
And most of us are very disconnected from one or all three.
Mm.
Like even
Yeah.
our own thoughts. What
Yeah.
thoughts am I having?
Yeah.
Am I where I get
they
to
my
choose
own?
them?
I
Yeah,
forgot I
yeah.
even had a heart.
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
going on
yeah,
here?
yeah.
I can use this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap, I feel called to kind of insert something in here, but it's something that we can uniquely speak to that I think is useful for everyone. And particularly after the referendum last year, I think it failed because a lot of people don't know an Indigenous person. They don't have a relationship with someone who is Indigenous. And often people ask us like, but Rhys and Emma, how did you start this business? How did you become friends? And I just want to demystify that just briefly here at the end, because I think it's something that is important to creating positive change, that we get over this fear of talking to an Indigenous person and, oh my gosh, they must be so different from me. They're just a human. And the story truly of how Rhys and I met is we were at a house party and he had these braids in, and I went up and I asked him like, so Rhys, is that like a traditional Aboriginal hairstyle?
Yeah, right.
And then Rhys went, nah, you seen that show Vikings? So, like completely different cultural reference.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just called him up like, hey, I'm doing a workshop in Kalgoorlie. How do we do an acknowledgement there? Like, hey, man, I'm throwing another party on Friday. Want to come over for beers? You know, it's just being a friend. And so if you're wondering like how to make a friend with an Indigenous person, go to an event. Talk to someone, be like, yo, how's the weather? What kind of music do you like listening to? Where do you live? What do you love about this place? Like, just be a human being. A lot of the judgments and distance is created.
Yeah, I mean, we share 99% of our DNA with any other human.
Mm.
And what fascinates me, I'm seeing in a lot of corporate cultures at the moment, that somebody will say in their acknowledgement that they have Aboriginal heritage, and people won't have known that about them. And then they go into, I have no idea what to do now. Like, what if I've said something bad to the person who I'm already friends with or who's been my colleague for 10 years? It's like it somehow others them when they were never othered.
I get that so hard, Celeste. It's like, and I'll put it in a different way. Here's the thing, right? I don't get offended by jokes.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like, you know, like if you say an Aboriginal joke, I'll probably just be like, you know, it's either funny or not. But I don't get angry at that. A lot of people do. It's more like the thing I get annoyed about is that like, let's say we're in a group of people and then somebody says something that is Aboriginal related. It's not that thing's the thing that annoys me. It's that everybody then looks to me to go, how do I react to this? Reece?
Tell me
like,
how I'm allowed to respond.
Yeah. And it's like, just be a human.
Yeah.
Just respond. And again, this is that grace. We need a bit more flexibility rather than this policing of
resilience
each other.
or that fragility that we have, where we're so awkward and uncomfortable with ourselves and other people. Yeah.
So yeah, go make a friend.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go be
how do
friendly.
I find one? And then what do I say? It's like,
Just be a human being.
you might find you already have one and you never knew.
Also, yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
You might even be that person to find out that you got Aboriginal ancestry. A lot of people doing that now where they go, oh shit, my great-grandmother was Aboriginal. And then for a lot of people, they go, well, what do we do with that information now? What do we do? Like, and that's the other thing. And people go, when do I become the Aboriginal? Like when? Is it when I just learnt that? Or is it like always inherent? Or is it when I learned the thing on the book? Or is it when I joined an Australia Day? Like when
do I get the official sanction or
the stamp? You know what I mean? Like the medal. I don't know whatever it is. You know, but there's that as well.
Yeah, there totally is. Thank you for fitting us in today on your whistle stop tour. You got in late last night. You're up very early to be with us. So I really hope that this conversation, and maybe we do another one in the future, starts to just open people up to being less scared, to the idea of love. I mean, wouldn't that be an incredible thing? But just to start to realise that not everyone responds the same way, and that they don't have to be so frightened, and that a lot of their fear and discomfort is coming from themselves, not society, not the other person, and that they've got agency over that they can decide to be different, to create culture around them, to create understanding and bridge divide.
Yeah.
And to access that is not so hard. It's just to connect to your country
Yeah.
and to connect to yourself through that connection to country. Country teaches, country heals.